Spring! We are officially in spring due to the equinox having occurred recently. So what better way to kick off the new season than by talking about a drunken revelry and the lamentable ramifications that arise from that. Drink responsibly or you might end up looking like an ass. This is Speaker's Corner. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Speaker's Corner. I am your ever-effervescent host, Tim Byron. It is springtime, and what an apropos new season of rebirth and life blossoming anew it is. The birds are singing, flowers are blooming, bees are buzzing. Some countries are doing a good job of working past this horrible pandemic to give fresh new life to a planet so enclosed in its moribund state of lockdownedness. No, that isn't a word, but maybe it will become one. Indeed, it is the time of optimism for some, which is fitting for what spring itself represents. Life coming back afresh and revitalized. The ancients used to celebrate spring for this very reason, with their own drunken revelries and bacchanalian observances. One such celebration was the ancient Athenian Anthesteria, which celebrated none other than the god of wine himself, Dionysus, who will be the focus of today's episode. Anthesterion was a 3-day-long festival honoring Dionysus, one of many, but this particular one celebrated the arrival of spring and arguably, more importantly, the maturation of the previous stored wine's vintage. What good is a new season without some alcohol in it, eh? Effectively, the second day is when people got good and well pissed, which even included slaves and children. Nothing binds people together like getting smashed together, eh? They get knocked down, they get back up again. You're never going to keep them down. And all that. In vito veritas, indeed. Anyway, Dionysus, or Dionysus, was the Greek god of wine. His Roman counterpart was Bacchus, and I'm sure we'll get into their stories at some later point, but today's episode will not focus so much on him, but on one of his parting gifts to a name synonymous with wealth, Midas, or rather Midas, as the pronunciation of his name should be. Either way, Dionysus was the son of Zeus, the almighty king of Greek gods, who reigned supreme on Mount Olympus. We will definitely get into all of his shenanigans at some point, if not multiple points, which is a really euphemistic way of saying the really bad and terrible things he did to women, boys, and humanity in general. He sired Dionysus out of his thigh. We may get into that later, but the king of the gods abandoned his thigh son, like many of his other children, per his nature, to live with a stepfather of sorts, whose name was Silenus. Silenus was somewhat of a satyr. Those half-goat humanoids, but had more horse-like features. But his defining characteristic was that he was a drunk. When I mean drunk, I mean fully sloshed all the time, wholly inebriated like Ernest Hemingway, or a certain Supreme Court justice. Right, now, Silenus was so loaded all the time that he had a group of satyrs, or a donkey, help support him. They were his Alcoholics Anonymous, except they were neither anonymous nor really helping him with what was clearly an issue. The reason why? Well, apart from the obvious, that is, for Silenus's constant state of inebriation was that it granted him clairvoyance. He could gain arcane knowledge whilst in his soused stupor, and could therefore predict the future. Fancy that! What's that? Yes, I'll tell him.
Speaker's Corner neither condones nor endorses the use of alcohol to grant one's psychic powers to read the future or require some anachronistic knowledge. It is the intent of Speaker's Corner only to inform and educate whilst attempting to entertain its audience in a manner that is sincere and reasonably informed. Likes, retweets, and whatever else are not endorsements.
Lawyers. They told me I had to say that. Anyway, Silenus was quite blasted one time, per his custom, when he got lost in Phrygia. he woke up in a lavish garden that belonged to that location's king, whose name should be familiar to you. Any guesses? Anybody at all? I did mention his name before. Old Goldfinger. Well, gold sensory organs. Phrasing, but you know what I mean. That's right. King Midas. King Midas. Midas was actually a really nice chap, so he brought in this drunken laggard into his home, which was a massive palace with all the niceties a king had back then. Midas let Silenus recuperate from what one can only assume was the ghastliest nightmare of hangovers for 10 nights, feeding him, that kind of thing. Well, we can reasonably assume that in this story that as kind as Midas was, he had servants. Or slaves. What was that? Either way, it probably wasn't Midas helping Silenus to stay on that proverbial sobriety wagon. Silenus recuperated, but then Midas was such a proper chap that he brought the formerly inebriated deity's mentor home to the god of wine himself on the 11th night. Well, now this can't possibly end badly now, can it? Well, if there's anything we know about mythology, it's that if it can end badly, it more than likely will. Also, can we pause for a moment and contemplate how Midas knew where to find Dionysus' palace? Does Google Maps include divine locations? Well, they are practically godlike. Or omniscient. Right. Well, Dionysus was beaming all over after the return of his mentor and drinking buddy, who, I must repeat, has been missing for 10 nights, even though he's a god and has divine powers and could probably have found out his own way home and how his best mate was doing. Anyway, I digress. Dionysus was so content that he offered Midas a wish. And you know what he wished for, given that it's synonymous with a man's name? Well, you must have heard the story. That's right. It was the golden touch. Anything the king touched would turn to gold. But what fools these mortals be. We all know he tested out this new superpower. First, he started touching some twigs on his way home, some stones, some ears of corn, and some apples. And he was quite chuffed at this magical power until, lo and behold, he tried to eat some food. He tried out his newfound ability already on some pieces of food, but these were show pieces, not sustenance. But now, of course, the king was hungry, and so when he tried to take a bite into his next meal, it turned into gold. He also tried drinking some water, but the cup turned gold, along with liquid H2O. All of this life-giving nutrition turned to gold almost immediately upon touching his mouth or tongue. Oh well. We suppose, right? No amount of food or water compares to a father's love for his child. A daughter, in Midas's case. But you can guess what happened already. She ran up to hug him, and he turned his daughter into gold. Now, this was obviously no way to keep living, so he made his way back to Dionysus's palace. Which one can only hope wasn't too far away for Midas's sake, or he might be unrecognizable. The god of wine was there, although possibly proper hammered when Midas requested that Dionysus take back his gift. It was fortuitous that Midas caught Dionysus on a good day, as the god can represent both glee and rage, given the nature of what alcohol can do to people. Dionysus was graceful as he slurred, "Sure. No problem, mate. All you gotta do is go to the river Pactolus and wash yourself." Blimey, was that all? Midas then did that, as anyone would do, and passed his ability onto the river, which still has golden sand to this very day, a remnant of Midas purging himself of his regrettably begotten gift. Midas passed Mount Molus as he was returning from the river back home to Phrygia. Now purged of his golden touch, he heard some lovely music playing, and it was an epic rap battle between the gods Pan and Apollo. No, it wasn't a rap battle, obviously, but a music contest between the two master musicians, Pan with his flute and Apollo with his lyre. The contest was going swimmingly, with the god of the mountain, whose name was also Tmolus, and yes, some mountains had gods in ancient Greece, declaring Apollo the clear winner, which was a bother to no one, including Pan himself. Well, if we know one thing about King Midas, is that he can say some really foolish and inopportune things at the worst times. So he interjected and declared Pan the winner. Now, if you know anything about the Greek gods, it's that they are the pettiest, most envious batch of deities one can encounter, except for the Norse gods, and Mesopotamian, and Egyptian, well, except for all the others, I suppose, but I digress. Apollo wasn't too keen on Midas slagging off his musicianship by saying he was worse than Pan, so he declared to the crowd watching the competition, "Boy, that man must have the ears of an ass." Henceforth, Midas would have the long, grey and furry ears of an ass, which was staggeringly embarrassing to one of such regal composure. He would constantly wear different headdresses, a royal turban, that sort of attire to hide the ears from sight. Mind you that his daughter was still gold, but it seemed like his biggest preoccupation was covering his ears. So when he needed a haircut, he would force the barber not to reveal his secret because, well, of course, this was a secret no one could hold. Thus, in an effort to sate his gossipy nature, the barber would dig a hole in the ground and whisper the secret into where he had just finished excavating. And you can guess what that led to, right? I mean, surely you must be able to guess that. The reeds, yes, the reeds sprang up from the ground where the barber whispered his secret, and when the wind passed through them, the reeds would knock into each other, saying, "King Midas has an ass's ears." Well then, let that be a lesson not to, be a good person by helping out a drunk, homeless mentor to a god and wishing for something. Dear me, maybe there isn't a lesson to learn, except try not to do or say foolish things, especially when those around have lots of wine or some other form of alcohol to imbibe, which is frankly a moral that applies to any season and not just spring. However, it particularly applies to the god whose primary festival was during the spring. Either way, I hope you're enjoying this fresh optimism that has sprung, and that relief that comes with this new season. Be sure to share, to like, to comment, subscribe to this channel, take life on the chin, and enjoy it like Dionysus. With a little less hedonism, perhaps. But share, and we might just have a surprise for you, so keep checking. Ta-ta, boys and girls, and cheerio. Cheerio. Here's looking at you, kid. I wonder what God's up to. Almighty answers leaves with more bloody questions. Hello again, my lovelies. Thank you so much for watching that video. It really means a lot. Well, what can I say? Keep the smile going. Do remember to subscribe, ring that bell. It helps out like you wouldn't believe. It just makes me so happy. You can see this big smile of mine. Keep calm, carry on, keep a stiff upper lip, and if you like, there are some other channels in the description. I apologise for their content, but I think they're worth a watch, probably. If anything, just to educate yourself. Best of the British to you. Pip pip, cheerio. And don't forget to subscribe. Till next time, this was Speaker's Corner. Ta-ra.